Inaugural National Faith in Blue. To start us off, we will receive remarks from CEO Marsha Ferranto. As I indicated, she is CEO of the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund, which operates and maintains the National Law Enforcement Memorial and the beautiful National Law Enforcement Museum that we are sitting in today. So thank you, Ms. Ferranto, for your hospitality and for hosting in such an appropriate place. Ms. Ferranto?
And good morning. Good morning to members of the press, Reverend Hutchins, faith-based leaders, government officials, and to all of the leaders of our law enforcement organizations here today. Welcome to the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial and Museum. Reverend, thank you for recognizing that the National Law Enforcement Museum would serve as the perfect backdrop for launching the most consolidated police community engagement project in history. The National Law Enforcement Memorial Museum has become the nation's gathering place for the important conversations, partnerships, and ideas that bring law enforcement and the communities they serve together. It is here at this museum where our greatest thought leaders in law enforcement, civic responsibility, and social change come together to engage in solution-based conversations. We stand united with the leaders who have created the National Faith and Blue Weekend as we continue to honor the fallen, tell the story of American law enforcement, and make it safer for those who serve. We are honored to be part of your announcement today, and we look forward to working with you in making National Faith and Blue Weekend a huge success.
Hutchins, he really organized the rally that I had a chance to attend.
We still have unresolved issues in America around race. The issues that we must change in America have to happen at the highest levels of our government. They have to happen in our private industry. They have to happen in our faith community, in our schools, in our homes. Over the last several years, technology, most especially social media, has been used to divide law enforcement and community in many ways. The time is now to come together, to lay aside whatever differences we might think we have, because in doing so, we'll find that there's more that unites all of us than there is that divides us. There is no limit to the good that we can achieve if we work together.
Good afternoon, or good morning. Good morning. Thank you to members of the media, and thank you to Ms. Ferranto for your hospitality. I'm Reverend Markel Hutchins, and I am Chairman and CEO of Movement Forward Incorporated. We are a solutions-oriented human and civil rights organization, but several months ago, I reached out to the director of the Office of Community-Oriented Policing Services at the U.S. Department of Justice because we had a vision that we could work collaboratively across our differences to really make a difference in our communities and in our nation. So we conceived of this idea of National Faith and Blue Weekend, and today we're happy that the nation's largest and most influential law enforcement organizations are collaborating on what has become the most collaborative and consolidated police outreach, police community engagement and outreach project in the history of our country. I'm delighted to be joined today by our nation's most prominent law enforcement leaders. It is an honor and a privilege to share with you today. Still, there's a certain heaviness that we feel in our country today when we consider the police-involved controversies around the deaths of people like George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. But there's also a great heaviness that we feel as Americans when we see officers who are assassinated in Dallas and Houston and other places across our country. We've got to figure out a way to work across our differences because, in fact, there is more that unites us than there is that divides us. That's what National Faith in Blue Weekend is all about. I grew up in the city of Atlanta, cradle of the American Civil Rights Movement, and over the last 20 years, I've been at the forefront of advocacy around human and civil rights issues. While the current national debate seems to be focused on the need for reforms that focus on policies and procedures, I submit to you today that the greater need for reform is in relational reform, how we relate one to another. This is possible only when leaders are intentional about transforming hearts and minds in lieu of mere changes in policies and procedures. You see, my friends, I think that our real challenge in America today is too often officers and citizens and residents of local communities don't know each other on a human level. That's what National Faith in Blue Weekend seeks to address. The connections that we make from one human to another are the greatest source of strength for our families, our communities, and our country. That connection is at the heart of social change, and it is a means by which American policing lives up to our nation's highest ideals and expectations. I absolutely believe this, and I have witnessed over the last 20 years of advocacy that views and ignorance on all sides are cured when we get to know one another on a human level. For this reason, until law enforcement professionals and citizens and residents of local communities get to know each other beyond their badge or their gun or their uniform or their individual identities, we'll continue to see the kind of divisive rhetoric we've seen in communities across this country. Furthermore, I repeat, this is not law enforcement's problem to solve alone. The public, everyday citizens, must accept responsibility for public safety and stop being so reliant on law enforcement to protect civility and decency in our society. Law enforcement professionals standing in one corner yelling, "Their lives matter," while protesters and unfortunately rioters standing in another corner yelling that our lives matter, will not lead us to any progress, will not lead us to resolution, it will not lead us to reconciliation. Community members of every kind and law enforcement professionals of every kind must sit together and reason together at tables of brotherhood and sisterhood in our nation, in every community and in every quarter. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. once said it best, "Darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate, only love can do that." What we need in America today is to turn to each other and not turn on each other. That's what National Faith in Blue Weekend is all about. Some might ask, why faith-based institutions? The answer is 65 million. That is the weekly attendance at our nation's more than 350,000 houses of worship. There are simply no community organizations that can even come close to rivaling the depth and breadth of influence presented by the faith community. You can find them every town, in every city, and in every neighborhood across the nation, meeting regularly and engaging people of all backgrounds, demographics, and beliefs. Furthermore, faith leaders have the trust of their congregations and most often their surrounding communities, providing entry for law enforcement officers to engage with the public, to collaborate on preventing and solving crime, and to speak out against violence that may come in the wake of an officer-involved tragedy. In closing, we have seen too much calling out in the last several years. I challenge us today to call each other up, to lift each other up, to see that there is more, in fact, that unites us than there is that divides us. Law enforcement professionals are members of our community, the vast and overwhelming majority of which serve and protect dutifully and honorably. We've got to honor that as Americans. And law enforcement has come today to announce that they are reaching out. They can't solve this problem alone. They're reaching out and embracing this notion that we must work together to change what we've seen in recent days. The rioting, the looting, undermines the best of who we are. We can do better, and we must do better. And with the leadership of those who have joined us today, we will, in fact, do better. October 9th through October 12th, we call upon faith-based organizations of every kind, churches, synagogues, mosques, temples, across every dynamic and every community across this country, to reach out to your law enforcement professionals, schedule some sort of community-facing activity. Through the support of our generous sponsors, FirstNet, built with AT&T, the Motorola Solutions Foundation, and RAP Technologies, our team has put together a wealth of resources to help you organize a positive community event that will lead to real lasting change in your local community. We ask every house of worship to organize and to mobilize. We ask every law enforcement organization to reach out to your local faith community. Earlier, about a month ago, Director Keith from the COPS office, whom you'll hear from later, and I held a meeting of the 150 most influential faith leaders across our country, from every faith tradition and every background. And those faith leaders and their faith communities have committed themselves to working collaboratively with law enforcement to bridge the gaps, to decrease bias in all directions, to build mutual trust and understanding, knowing that this and this alone is our only pathway forward. I'd like to welcome some of our law enforcement leaders to join me at the microphone today to give remarks on behalf of their various associations. And if you all would come and stand together in a socially distanced way, the Fraternal Order of Police, the nation's largest organization of law enforcement officers, the International Association of Chiefs of Police, the Hispanic American Police Command Officers Association, Major City Chiefs Association, Major County Sheriffs Association, the National Association of District Attorneys, the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives, the National Sheriff's Association, the United States Department of Homeland Security, and the United States Department of Justice. The National Association of Women Law Enforcement Executives is also here. And the Federal Law Enforcement Officers Association. First, we will hear from Patrick Yoles. He's the national president of the Fraternal Order of Police. Then we will hear from Chief Steve Stevens. He's the president of the International Association of Chiefs of Police. Then we'll hear from Chief Don Terena. He's the president of the Hispanic American Police Command Officers Association. Then we'll hear from Chief Peter Newsham on behalf of the Major City Chiefs Association. Chief Newsham is the chief of police here in our nation's capital. We'll then hear from Sheriff Mike Chapman, Vice President of Major County Sheriffs of America. We'll then hear from Nelson Bond, Executive Director of the National District Attorneys Association. Then Linda Williams, President of the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives. Jonathan Thompson, Executive Director of the National Sheriff's Association. And Assistant Secretary John Hill from the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. President Yoles.
Thank you, Reverend. I appreciate the opportunity to be here today. What a fitting location or this place for us to be here to have this this very needed discussion. Right outside of this door, you'll find years and years and years of history of our noble profession. Right outside of the front door of this place, you'll find over 20 some odd thousand law enforcement officers in our long history who have given us their life and sacrificed their communities. But we're also here at another place, and it's a place in time. It's a place in time to where we've had discussions in the past of our need to be able to unite and be able to have these fact-based discussions in order to improve the criminal justice system. We're at a place in time where people really need healing. We're at a place in time where we need to see a path forward, and we have the ability to light that path forward. You know, we've never been in this particular place as we are right now, where our nation is just struggling with a whole lot of issues. And I will, also comment, make the same comments that Reverend Hutchinson said. There is nothing that we can't accomplish if we don't work together to do it. We just have to have the will and the desire to do so. And I recognize that this event, although it is one event, it starts with one conversation. One conversation of people who are law enforcement officers and members of our communities, members of our church, and members that play a big part in who our communities are. But we have demonized, or we have not recognized either side, not willing to have those conversations in order to be able to find a path forward. Here's an opportunity. It's one event, one weekend. One weekend can lead to another, and to another. And we're very proud to be part of this movement. And have these fact-based discussions and find a path forward at a time when our nation truly needs it. Thank you, Reverend. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. It is my pleasure to be here today in recognition of National Faith in Blue Weekend. The International Association of Chiefs of Police is committed to supporting police in their communities in their efforts to engage in productive dialogue, form strong partnerships, and identify meaningful solutions. As our nation continues to grapple with a global pandemic and civil unrest, it's my hope that this event will be one of many in which our country can come together to build sustainable and trusting community and police relations. Stronger, safer communities are only possible if we're able to build a strong foundation on which they can stand. By partnering with our faith-based communities, National Faith and Blue Weekend offers a unique way to reinforce connections and collaborations between our policing professionals and the communities in which they serve. The IACP is honored to be included in this important initiative and looks forward to offering our continued support. Thank you.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. My name is Dom Tejeda, and I'm a national vice president, just make that correction, of HAPCOA, the Hispanic American Police Command Officers Association. Since 1973, HAPCOA has worked within our Latinx communities as command officers, building relationships with those that we protect and serve. That's been one of our core values that we've done since our enactment way back then. That's one of the things that we believe has made us successful as officers working with the communities that we protect and serve. We're proud to be a part of this event today that we were invited to participate in. Give me a second here. Apologize for this. You know, we encourage the communities across the nation to take advantage of this opportunity to listen, to hear, to learn, and to break bread, as it were, together, and to work together to enact solutions. When we work together, as you spoke about humanity, it is about humanity. When we can relate to each other as people, that's the beginning of of change, of relating to people. I mean, we're officers at the end of the day, at the beginning, the end, we're all people. And when people see us as people, as law enforcement officers, we go back home, we go into our communities. People have to understand, well, they can begin understanding that we're them, they're us, we're all part of the same communities. So this is an opportunity across the country for us to get together in a way that's non-threatening, whether it's a run, a festival, and all the different opportunities that are planned out there for people just to be people, for officers to be out there with the faith community, for people just to have that opportunity to talk, to listen, to hear, to share, right? When you can share each other's pain, you know, you hear their triumphs, their achievements, you know, you start building those relationships, and you want those relationships beforehand. Something happens later on, you have that relationship that you can go to. But it needs to start somewhere, you know, and this is that opportunity. We encourage everybody, and we're proud to be a part of this event that weekend. And we encourage everybody to take advantages across the nation. We're proud to join all these associations, and thank you for inviting us. Appreciate it.
Good morning. Reverend Hutchins, you said there's more that unites us than divides us. You quoted the Reverend Martin Luther King and said that hate cannot drive out hate, but only love can. And those are words that I think are appropriate in this circumstance. Thank you for those words. I am Pete Newsham. I'm the Chief of Police for the Metropolitan Police Department here in Washington, D.C. But today I'm serving in the role representing the Major City Chiefs Association. The Major City Chiefs Association represents police executives from the largest cities across the United States and Canada. Our organization was formed so that police executives could share ideas, experiences, and strategies for addressing the challenges of policing in urban areas. The ability to collectively share our unique perspectives and insights help guide things such as policy, training, and innovation. At Major City Chiefs, we know that mutual trust and respect between law enforcement and the community is the cornerstone of sound and effective policing. Trust makes cities safer. We believe that engaging in relational policing is the best method for building a strong bond between officers and the communities that they serve. Major City Chiefs Association recognizes that one of the most important relationships in our communities is with our faith leadership. Faith leaders serve as a trusted advisor to many in the community and can positively influence neighborhoods through communication, fellowship, and community action. The idea to hold a National Faith and Blue Weekend is brilliant. Simple, but brilliant. The weekend will facilitate collaborations between law enforcement and residents through established houses of worship in an effort to build safer, stronger, and more unified communities. So on behalf of the Major City Chiefs Association, we officially endorse the Faith and Blue Weekend Initiative. There will be a number of our agencies that will be participating in this effort across the country, including my police department here in Washington, D.C., the Metropolitan Police Department. Thank you. Now I will call up my good friend, Mike Chapman, to the podium to say a few remarks on behalf of the Major County Sheriffs of America.
Thank you, Chief. I appreciate that. Good morning. I'm Sheriff Mike Chapman, Loudoun County, Virginia, and it's truly an honor to be here today representing Major County Sheriffs of America. Major County Sheriffs of America are made up of over 100 sheriffs, and we serve the largest populations throughout the United States. We also have we provide public safety to about 120 million Americans. The intersection of faith and law enforcement has never been more important than it is today. When we look at the turmoil that's taking place across the United States right now, it's important that we act as the peacekeepers, and in some instances out there, we actually have to enforce the law. That's part of our job. So it's very important that people understand what we do and how we do our job. And that's really where the faith-based community can come in. They can help with our outreach very much and with our messaging. They are really provide the fabric for the community for us to be able to do our job and get our message out. In Loudoun County, where I'm from, we have a chaplain program, and we have 5 chaplains that serve throughout the county. They help people in distress. They've come out on calls with us when people are in distress. They work with us at our adult detention center. They work with our inmates there. But just as important, they work with our law enforcement officers. And that's very important because they work with them and their families when they're in distress. And it's very, very important that people understand that as we're trying to do our jobs out there in law enforcement, that we're also human, that law enforcement officers are trying to do the best they can under some very difficult circumstances out there, and that we face the same challenges and the same emotions that the public that we serve does. So it's very important for us to all work together, to work with our faith-based leaders, to get the message out, to make sure that the community knows what we do, how we do it, why we do it. The education could not be more important than it is right now. So we are really happy to be partnered up here with the Faith in Blue weekend, and we look forward to this this weekend, October 9th. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Nelson Bunn, and I'm the Executive Director of the National District Attorneys Association. Our association is made up of over 5,000 members from around the country in support of our nation's prosecutors, dedicated to training, technical assistance, and other resources in order to support the overall profession and make sure that they have all the resources they need to ensure justice is attained. On behalf of our over 5,000 members and our current president, Nancy Parr, who is the elected Commonwealth's attorney for the city of Chesapeake, Virginia, we're so glad to be here with so many dedicated law enforcement professionals today. I want to thank all of our sponsors, Reverend Hutchins, who has been a great partner and ally throughout this entire process, ahead of the October Faith in Blue weekend. As I have told our staff and all of our members around the country, we're facing dual crises right now. A global pandemic, as we all know today, with our social distancing and masks, but also protests around the country in search of racial justice. As we deal with these two dual crises, we also have the everyday issues of human trafficking, domestic violence, child abuse, violent crime, and so many other issues that we rely on our communities and our partners, whether it be law enforcement or community stakeholders, to ensure that we're able to protect our communities and ensure that justice for both victims, defendants, and other individuals is attained. Bringing together law enforcement, and in our particular context, the nation's prosecutors and houses of worship, is just one way that we can better protect our communities and, as the Reverend said earlier, bring us together instead of dividing us. Just one example of prosecutors partnering with houses of worship in Shelby County, Memphis, Tennessee. The District Attorney General there holds Restoration Saturdays, where in partnership with houses of worship, she is working on expungement clinics, restoring driver's licenses for those that have been suspended due to fines and fees, and also helping individuals that may have questions around child support and other issues. That's just one example of a prosecutor coming together with her community and houses of worship in order to make sure that the community is supportive of one another and helps address the issues that they face. We are so excited, again, to be part of this National Faith in Blue weekend in October. Have greatly appreciated Reverend Hutchins and all of our law enforcement partners as we come together for such an important weekend. Our members around the country are very excited to participate, and I know many have already, through their individual agencies, shared information about this Faith in Blue weekend. And again, we're very excited to be here and appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. Excuse me. I want to encourage all of our viewers that are watching live to visit the website at www.faithandblue.org, www.faithandblue.org. I'm going to adjust our agenda just a little bit. I want to bring up the national president of the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives, or NOBLE, which is one of the nation's leading law enforcement organizations, but it's an organization without which we would not be here. it was Noble that brought us together with a number of the national law enforcement groups, and so I'm especially delighted to have Linda Williams, who's a retired executive with the Secret Service and from Nashville, is now the national president of Noble. And after President Williams, we'll have Assistant Secretary John Hill from the U.S. Department of Justice, who will greet us, and then we will proceed with Jonathan Thompson, the National Executive Director of the National Sheriff's Association, and then Director Phil Keith from the Office of Community-Oriented Policing Services will join us via video.
Well, good morning. I bring you greetings on behalf of the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives, NOBLE. I am Linda Williams, National President of the organization, and as he stated, former Deputy Assistant Director of the United States Secret Service. I currently serve as a Professor of Criminal Justice at Middle Tennessee State University, which is my alma mater. But NOBLE is excited and honored to be part of the National Faith in Blue Weekend. I want to acknowledge Reverend Markel Hutchins, Director Phil Keith, our sponsors, and many law enforcement partner organizations. This initiative will assist in building bridges and breaking down biases through activities and outreach efforts among law enforcement professionals and the communities that we serve. NOBLE believes that citizens can support their communities and law enforcement while seeking to reimagine reform and how it should be. See, I was raised as a little girl in Memphis, Tennessee, and where I was raised, the church was the cornerstone of the community. Most all the activities in the community were based on that foundation and trust, with a mutual trust and respect for each other. Most importantly, the houses of faith taught love and respect for all of God's children. So to this aim, we encourage our local agencies and communities to participate in the National Faith in Blue Weekend. I'd like to take a moment to remember to our comrades that recently gave the most ultimate sacrifice of their lives in the line of duty. That's Captain Stanley Elroy of the Georgia Department of National Resources and Detective James Chernovisky of the Cleveland Police Department. But lastly, I will be remiss if not acknowledging the recent use of force encounters within our communities and our law enforcement. NOBLE remains committed to justice in the cases of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Rashard Brooks, Daniel Prude, Jacob Blake, and many more. Justice must be transparent, justice must be equal, and justice must be fair. Thank you, and God bless you.
Good morning, and thank you on behalf of Acting Secretary Wolf. He had planned to be here. He got called away at the last minute, but he does send his greetings and appreciates the endeavor that's underway to make October the 9th through 12th a very important milestone for our country and also for the law enforcement and faith communities as well. This discussion began for us with a phone call that we had with NOBLE back in March after the civil unrest started to emerge, and our secretary wanted to better understand some of the perspectives from the law enforcement community, specifically the African American community and some of the civil rights officials who represent that community. And we had a very good dialogue, and as a result of that, Reverend Hutchins and I had conversations following, and it was a very productive discussion, and so it led to our participation in the Faith in Blue Weekend. But I just want to say that this is a pivotal moment for law enforcement in our country. As the nation continues to overcome challenges of our time, we are reminded of the strength and resolve of our people. And we are reminded of our shared values and principles that bring us together. And Reverend Hutchins, you mentioned that in your opening remarks. We in the Department of Homeland Security have a very large footprint in the law enforcement community around the country. Over 250,000 of us in the Department of Homeland Security. We make quite an impact in terms of the law enforcement presence when it's necessary. But on the other hand, we also are very concerned about hearing from faith-based groups. And so our secretary directed just recently that we would create a faith-based advisory security council to hear from the faith community, to allow for their input. And we look forward to that meeting sometime in October when we will get together with faith-based representatives across all faiths in our country and trying to bring together some of the security issues that they face, but also how we then can better address some of the concerns that they have that we deal with in law enforcement. I also want to say that our nation's law enforcement officers rise every morning. They work graveyard shifts. They're ready to lay down their lives in the line for our fellow citizens. And these acts of selflessness need to once again inspire our nation and bind us together in unity. And many of them are inspired and fostered in faith. I want to say to you that as a young man, I was raised in a minister's home. And so I saw the faith community at work firsthand as a preacher's kid. And it was a very important role for me because it gave me a perspective that I didn't even know was going to be happening in my life later in terms of law enforcement. But it gave me an orientation and a perspective that I thought was very helpful. And then as I went into law enforcement and spent nearly 30 years working the streets, it was regularly the faith community that was there to support, but also to help provide perspective in terms of the work that we were doing in a local community. Oftentimes when we did community policing at a state level even, we would go into the faith communities first, as Linda said, because we found that they had shared values with the same principles that we have in upholding our country. So I think it's really going to be a significant event, as has been said today in October, to bring together our groups. And I look forward to that. And DH supports you, and most importantly, a vast majority of the American people support you in this effort that you've undertaken, Reverend Hutchins. So I look forward to building on our partnerships together and with each of you as we continue to move ahead to bring peace and unity across our country. Thank you.
Well, good morning. I'm Jonathan Thompson with the National Sheriff's Association. On behalf of the 3,086 elected sheriffs in this country, I stand before you deeply humbled to follow all of my peers and colleagues in these remarks. There is nothing perhaps more telling in our nation than when we face troubles, where do we look for solutions? We look to one another. We look to our families, we look to our peers, we look to our colleagues. Every day, men and women in uniform, whether here in the United States or around the world, they put on their uniform and they vow and pledge to do their job for everyone. Every day in this country, others put on a different uniform, whether it's a burqa, whether it's a collar, and they use their faith to improve our country and to improve the standing of the people in our communities. Some of them some of us look to them as our chiefs or our sheriffs. They are. They are our chiefs and our sheriffs of faith. And as the chief said, and Sheriff Chapman said, those are the people, those are the two pillars in our community too often that we have to count on. And now, today, we can count on them. Reverend Hutchins, I want to thank you for the vision, the tenacity. I want to thank all of the peer organizations here because we do have this in common. We all do. I want to thank the COPS office and Director Phil Keith. I want to thank DHS and the Secretary. But I want to thank all of the people who participated in a phone call a little over 3 weeks or so ago. Every single religion that you may have heard of in this country and probably around the world participated in a call to understand what Faith and Blue Weekend was all about. And it's about simple precepts: respect, honor, partnership, community, love, and doing right. Every day, those that put on their respective uniforms strive for that. And we will continue to strive for it. They will. We have many challenges as a nation. We always will. But we have solutions in our hands. And what you're seeing today is a combination of the institutions of faith and the institutions of public safety coming together and saying, we need a weekend to come together and be one, and to be Americans, and to stand up for wrongs and make them right, and to stand up when we have right and celebrate it, recognize it, and honor it. Reverend, on behalf of all of my peers and my partners, I want to thank you, and I want to thank you for letting us, National Sheriff's Association, and on behalf of our president, Sheriff Dave Mahoney, be a small part of this. It's deeply humbling, and it's moving, and it's also exciting in many ways. I think all of us in this room, with the past weekend, and the deaths we saw, whether in Chicago or elsewhere across this country, were wounded, incredibly so, whether it's a man and woman in uniform or a small child in Chicago. This effort today is something that the country should be thinking about rolling behind and raising our hand collectively, not in a fist, not to say that one power has more over another, but to say that we all need help. And when we wake up every morning, the help we need is here. It's us. It's the men and women in uniform, whether it's a uniform of religion or a uniform of law enforcement or fire. And we thank you, and God bless you, and humbled. Thank you.
Hello, Director Keith. One moment, please. Director Keith, you're live, sir. Director Keith?
Glad we got to see Director Keith. The COPS office at the U.S. Department of Justice has been an awesome partner of ours. We're almost finished, and I would ask our law enforcement partners that once we're finished, let's join each other up front, and I'm going to say a word of prayer and take some photos together, and I know some of these news outlets have questions for us individually. I want to reiterate what our law enforcement partners have said. This is a historic moment. Never before in the history of our country have all of the national law enforcement groups come together under one banner for one community outreach project. But these are unprecedented times, and the times call for us to come together. This is not about politics or partisanship. It's not about a pandemic, and it certainly is not about a presidential election. It's about people. We don't agree on everything, even some of the law enforcement organizations that you've heard from together. But what we have done today is provided an example to the American people that every community, every neighborhood must address the challenges that face that particular community in that particular neighborhood. And it can't just be a national movement. We call upon every law enforcement agency in our country to work and reach out to the faith community. Schedule an event for National Faith in Blue Weekend, October 9th through the 12th. We call upon every faith-based organization. As our team mobilizes and organizes across the country, we've provided a wealth of resources at faithinblue.org that can bring us together, and that's what this is all about. Faith in Blue Weekend will power a movement where law enforcement professionals and residents build connections that break down divides, decrease bias, increase familiarity, and spur ongoing collaboration. Nobody knows the solutions that your community needs like you do, and we call upon you to stand up. We've marched, many folks have marched, and many folks have protested, but now it's time to do the work, the difficult work of reaching beyond our comfort zones. Clearly, law enforcement has issued an olive branch. They've made a plea, and I hope that the American people will hear them and respond affirmatively. This could not be done without the generous support of our sponsors, and we'll hear briefly from our sponsors. We're so proud that our presenting sponsor is FirstNet, built with AT&T, and our co-sponsors are the Motorola Solutions Foundation and Wrap Technologies. First, we'll hear from the Vice President for FirstNet AT&T, Jim Bugle, and then we'll hear from Tom Smith, the President of Wrap Technologies, and I will acknowledge now Mark Mcnulty, our partner from Motorola Solutions and the Motorola Solutions Foundation. Jim?
Again, we want to thank the Reverend Dwayne Noble and all the other associations for allowing us to be part of this. This is an imperative for our country. As has been made many comments today, we obviously firmly agree and believe with what the Reverend is pulling together here. And we are humbled to be a small part of it and pledge our continued support. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Thomas Smith, president of Wrap Technologies, and my career has been spent supporting law enforcement from when I started Taser back in 1993 to this company that's a brand new company that's just been around for a very short time period. But our focus has always been to make tools and equipment to help police do their jobs safer and more effective. And we were extremely excited to work with Reverend Hutchins and all of the law enforcement agencies that are here today, because this is not going to be solved at a federal level. And it's very easy for people to stand and criticize or point out problems, but it's very, very difficult and hard work for people to come up with solutions. And as this is a start, it's unprecedented, hasn't been done before. We wanted to be involved with this because it is going to be solved with the communities and all of the law enforcement leaders that are here today, those faith-based worship communities and all the communities. It has to be done at that level. And that's why this is such an important organization and such an important step. And it's the first step of many steps, because it's going to take a lot of work to resolve all of the unrest that's going on across our country. And it's touched everyone in this country. And we're just excited to be a part of it, very humbled, appreciate the opportunity. We look forward to working with all of you and thank the media for helping us get this word out, because we do have to get it out to all members and get them all involved. That first October 9th through the 12th is going to be that first step and that first weekend. And it's hopefully just the first step of many to solve those relationships that need to be done out there with all of us, because it's going to take everybody's effort to change. So we're humbled to be a part of it, and thank you for having us here today, Reverend.
Thank you. Thank you again to our sponsors. I want to acknowledge all of our law enforcement partners. The U.S. Department of Justice, Office of Community-Oriented Policing Services has co-convened this effort with us. The Bureau of Justice Assistance and the Office of Justice Programs, also at the U.S. Department of Justice, the Federal Law Enforcement Officers Association, the Fraternal Order of Police, the Hispanic American Police Command Officers Association, the International Association of Chiefs of Police, the International Brotherhood of Police Officers, the International Association of Chaplains, the Major County Sheriffs of America, the National Association of Assistant U.S. Attorneys, the National Association of Police Organizations, the National Association of Women Law Enforcement Executives, the National Black Police Association, the National District Attorneys Association, the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund, the National Narcotics Officers Association Coalition, the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives, the National Police Foundation, the National Sheriff's Association, Major Cities Chiefs of America, Police Executive Research Forum, Secure Communities Network, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. Thank you so much to all of our partners. Again, this is unprecedented, but we need all of you, including all of you in this room. Let's go to work. Let's make sure that every community in our country is focused on resolution and healing and solutions on November 9th through the 12th. There is nothing inherently religious about this work. We recognize the faith communities in every local neighborhood have the influence, they have the resources, and I can't appeal enough to the faith community. And I want to say thank you to all of the faith leaders that have been engaged. Jonathan talked earlier, and I mentioned we had 162, over 150 different faith-based organizations that we were mobilizing during a conference call that Director Keith and I hosted. We're reaching out across this country, but we call upon everybody. Let's get involved. Let's be the change that we seek. We will not see a resolution or any solutions if we only fight. We can turn to each other and not on each other. I'd ask our law enforcement partners to come and join us up here at the front, take a picture, and I'm just going to say a word of prayer, if it's okay, for our nation. I'm sorry. I said November 9th through the 12th. It is October 9th, Friday, October 9th, Saturday, October 10th, Sunday, October 11th, Monday, October 12th. Visit www.faithandblue.org, www.faithandblue.org. Again, thank you to Thomas Canavan and Marsha Ferranto, and the folks here at this beautiful facility. And thank you again to our sponsors. Tom, you and your team have been wonderful. Certainly FirstNet built with AT&T and our longstanding partners at Motorola Solutions. There's no cost for anyone to be involved. Now let us go to work together. Let us pray. God, we're so thankful and grateful that even in the midst of a challenging time in our nation's history, we have a God that we can turn to. We thank you so much, God, that although we're in a dark day right now, that the brink of dawn is always before the brightest day. We thank you, God, that we're seeing a better and brighter future. Give us the strength and the courage not to turn on each other, but to turn to each other. Law enforcement recognizes that some changes need to happen, but they cannot do it by themselves, God. Give the American people, give every community leader, give every faith leader the courage of their convictions to fight with tenacity and faith, but not just to fight against something, but to fight for something, to fight for justice and freedom and equality and dignity and decency. Too much crime and violence, too much demonizing and division, too much polarization, and I dare say too much politics. But God, bring us together. We are a nation of one. We are people of one. We are different places. We are from different places. We see things differently, but there is more that unites us than there is that divides us together, God. I pray for every law enforcement professional. I pray for every young person. I pray that you would make crooked roads straight. We know that if we have faith, you have the power to see us through. See us through now. Bless all of our efforts collectively as one. If you do this, there's so much we don't know and don't understand. But if you do this, God, we'll be careful to give you praise. In your name we pray. Amen. Thank you.
At this time, we will take photos, and if there is interest in interviews, those will be held in the DuPont Gallery, and there are individuals and representatives ready to direct you to that area for interviews. Thank you.
Can you all stop the recording? I want to take an offering. Pat Yos.